The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Get your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just drop. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our live stream for NHL DFS. It's been about a week or so. I kind of feel like it's been forever, but finally life settled down a little bit, and I'm able to get back onto the live streams to help you guys out. And today I have Jim with me. You guys probably know him as RK in Slack chat. He is the guy behind the Research Station, Domination Station. He's a Tiers genius, almost took it down last night. So let's welcome Jim to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for having me back. Yeah, last night was rough. Last night was rough, man. I looked too early. I had first through fifth locked up, 2,400 profit, and Winnipeg decided to score some goals.
Hey, I mean, what did you ended up profiting what, a couple $100?
Yeah, I still maxed at 35 entries, so 175 in. I took like 490 back, something like that. So I still had one lineup that held in the fifth place, and actually majority of my lineups crossed the cash line last night, so that was helpful. I just kind of pulled it all together at some point during the end. But yeah, I just remember posting. I was in second place, going, man, I just need Landeskog and McCarr to do something because they both had zeros. And then 5 minutes later, there was that stack slam. McCarr, Cog, and McKinnon all got together on a goal, and then McCarr ended up having the 3-point night, and Scheifele's 3-point night is what took me out of the money.
Yeah, and I mean why was McKinnon on tier 2 last night?
I have no idea. I think it was, I can't remember who all was in tier 1. Oh yeah, because anytime Edmonton and Toronto is on the slate, it's always Matthews, Marner, Draisaitl, and Connor take tier 1, and just the way they structure it, there's only ever 4 players in tier 1.
Okay.
So they're saying Marner's a tier 1 player over McKinnon. I think that's just to prevent people from stacking Matthews and Marner together. The same with Draisaitl and McDavid. Ideally, I would like to see Marner and Draisaitl in tier 2 so you can use those stacks. But I think they put that thought into it. They like trying to break the stacks up so you can't just stack full lines all the time and go that way. You got to screw with your lineup some to make it fit.
Yeah, I mean, hey, at least you still profited, which was nice. And we were just talking before the show how Fanduel is completely messed up. Like I said earlier in the day that I was able to make a McKinnon, McDavid, and Matthews cash lineup, and I did. And McDavid, he obviously didn't perform for his price, but even with the value, like I had Provorov as core. He scored 32.8 points. Like he just crushed it. James McCann's been on fire since he took over the second line when Malkin went down. He had a goal. I mean, my value plays didn't really work out. Like Galchenyuk only had 4 points, but he was min price. That doesn't kill you. I also played Bolivier. He only had 1 shot. He was cheap. That didn't really kill me. Devin Taves had 7 shots. I mean, they scored 5 goals. If he gets 1 goal, he just shoots me up even farther. And then you just mitigate the chalk in playing McKinnon, McDavid, and Matthews. And I played looking at my double up lineups. We see McKinnon was 47.8, McDavid was 54.9, and Matthews was 77.9. So you're basically in cash, and this is why we stress a lot, like especially on FanDuel, you play those top studs because you know they're going to be so high owned. And if they dud, it's really not going to hurt you. You have to hit your other spots that are low owned that are going to kind of shoot you up the leaderboard. Like, I don't know why Provorov was 2.7% in my double ups, and he's been outplaying Gossesbear religiously, and Gossesbear was like 30% owned. I mean, he was cheaper, but it wasn't like that much cheaper where like you couldn't afford him.
I don't get the DFS love for Gossesbear because he just got put on waivers today. I mean, I think the Flyers are finally just done with him. He's been so inconsistent, hit and miss. He frustrates the hell out of me watching him.
I know, and like
they should have traded him by now.
There was one time where he was running a little hot streak, and then I was like, all right, I like it. He's cheap. Played him, and he scored 0. And I was like, one of our members actually messaged me and was like, what's up with Ghost? And I was like, exactly what you said. He's being a ghost. Like he was playing minutes and just not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times this year he's been benched. I mean, Vigneault's been pretty quick to bench players and bring them back in. That's how they came back last night. I mean, it was just like I always say with this team. I don't know what it is. They come out flat. They play down to their opponents. They let Buffalo walk all over them for 2 periods. They benched the Lindblom line, just shortened the bench. They only went with 9 forwards in the 3rd period, and then they got to play captain comeback again. So they look like a cup caliber team in the 3rd period constantly, but you can't expect to come back from a 3-goal deficit every game. They got to stop putting themselves in that hole.
Well, especially with teams in the playoffs too. Like they're not Buffalo. Like they're not going to give up that lead. And I saw a photo on Twitter, and Buffalo they had 3 guys up top, and everyone on Philly was in front of the goal. It's like, do you not like you can't like forecheck at all? You can't.
Well, that's what I've been talking about with the defensive breakdowns. They're just leaving people wide open. They're or I actually no, that was the other way around. But at the Flyers, been doing the same thing. They'll have 4 players on one guy in the corner, and like somebody like Zibanejad when the Rangers had that 9-goal game a couple of weeks ago. That's what was happening. The Flyers would have 4 guys in the corner, and Zibanejad would be standing out in front of the net by himself, and nobody on him.
Yeah, and it's just insane. But that's enough for yesterday and kind of going over some things. Got a nice little 7-game slate tonight. The good thing about the slate is basically every game except 2 starts at 7, so we should have all the news and stuff. Probably the latest, I would say, like 6:30 for the 7 o'clock games. The only 2 we're kind of waiting on, Carolina and Chicago. Both of those goalies are confirmed. We're waiting on Nashville to kind of figure out what they're going to do, which we might not hear before lock, but they do have Saros projected right now on left wing lock, so we'll kind of have to keep an eye out on that. But everything else, we have a couple projections for the 7 o'clock games for goalies, but we should know those. We probably will get them during this stream or shortly after, and we'll put it in Slack too, just so you guys know. For anybody watching that's not a DFS Army member, if you use the promo code Mdell, you can save 10% on your VIP memberships. Get in, come into Slack, ask questions, learn a new sport. We have a ton of sports. We got MLB starting on Thursday, which I am so pumped about. So I'm still going to try to do these live streams as much as I can. I do MLB work for the Army as well. So I'll be hit or miss, but I'm going to try to keep NHL active because there's a lot of money to be made, especially now that MLB is starting. A lot of people are going to kind of move over there, and we'll be able to still win some money with NHL. But without further ado, we will start into this slate here. And the first game on the slate, we have the Edmonton Oilers at the Montreal Canadiens. Edmonton is implied 3 goals, Montreal 3.1. Edmonton's on a back-to-back. I want to say they're on a 4-6 or at least a 3-5. Tough series against Toronto. Montreal hasn't played in about 2 weeks, so they should be rested. Tyler Toffoli, he's still out for Montreal with that injury. But we will start with the goalies here. And Jim, what are your thoughts on the 2 goalies for this game?
The game overall, it is kind of odd on paper because, like you said, Montreal having the rest. Not sure if that's going to make them come out rusty or not because they haven't been practicing this whole time either. Edmonton is on the brutal end of a long road road streak. But I mean, Edmonton's fighting for first place in the division. Montreal's kind of the gatekeeper for fourth, and the Vegas odds have the game in Montreal's favor. I think they're taking that rest and the Oilers road trip into account. Model wise, Koskinen's getting the edge tonight if he were to start. Their history, Edmonton is 4-2, 4-2-1 with a shutout in their last 7 games against Montreal. So these teams still have a lot of games to play against each other this year. I am liking Price as the GPP option because I think a lot of people are still going to play McDavid and Draisaitl and those types of lineups. They're your go-to guys every night. So having Price as a hedge play GPP, I think that might be a good move there. Let me pull up the goalie tab real quick here.
Yeah, so Koskinen is confirmed for Edmonton, so he'll grab the start here. It's hard. I mean, it's hard. I feel like it's harder for the goalies to kind of come back after a long layoff like this because they're not seeing pucks shot at them in practice, so they could be a little rusty and their angles might be a little bit messed up. So that's kind of my concern there. Like Edmonton, they could be tired. They're on the road. They're traveling. But if we're looking like cash wise, like there's not a ton to pay up for. Like just play McDavid. He's going to be chalky. He didn't do much last night. And normally when he doesn't do much one night, the next night he can come out and get like 3 or 4 points. So that wouldn't shock me either if he grabs a few points here tonight.
Yeah. I'm showing Price as being like the second worst projected going on the slate tonight, but again, that's with the model giving Edmonton the edge. If you throw the win bonus on him, I don't know. It's really going to come down to how tired is Edmonton and how on the ball is Montreal. I think I could see both goalies being worth using a GPP. I don't think either one of them is going to break the slate, so I don't see heavy exposure to either one of them tonight. It's kind of just a judgment call there. I'd say at least 10%, no more than 30%, either one of them in large field GPPs.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Neither of them really hit my eye for Fanduel wise. Looking over at Cam's Draftkings sheet, he has Carey Price as a GPP option. The one concern I would have with Koskinen and Montreal not playing for a while is maybe they're not going to shoot as much, especially early, just because they might just be getting their feet back underneath them. So it's a little concerning for tournaments because you want to see that high shot volume to be able to take it down. So that would be like my concern there. But anything else on the goalies, or you want me to get into the skaters here?
As far as those two, no. I mean, Montreal, it does have high shot volume, and Edmonton does allow more than 30 shots a game. So if Edmonton comes out tired and Montreal is on their game, I think Koskinen has a chance. Does have a chance of getting high shot volume there, but it's probably not going to be the good kind.
Yeah, I can definitely see Edmonton scoring a couple goals. For the stacks wise for tournaments, their top line, Draisaitl, McDavid, PRV, they're in play. I just don't like that third guy on their line. Like they never really do much. Draisaitl and McDavid basically take up all the shots and most of the points. So if you're playing Draisaitl and McDavid, I really like pairing them with Nurse or Barrie. Nurse getting power play 2 time. A lot of people might shy off of him. He's always lower owned than Barrie, but they're both super priced up now, especially on Fanduel. I give the slight lean to to Nurse, just because he's been scoring more goals, which equates to more points, obviously, on Fanduel. And he's got better shots and blocks too lately. It's kind of a pick one and don't really play them both unless you're doing a full like onslaught Edmonton stack. But with Fanduel, especially pricing them both up, it's going to be hard to fit all 4 of those guys in to your tournaments unless you're going to stack like Detroit and just like hope for the best. For cash, McDavid, you're going to play him in cash at center. There's no reason not to on this slate with not a lot of guys to pay up for. and I do like Nurse a little bit more for cash. Draftkings, I'm not really looking so much in cash, mainly because I like Ovechkin a lot more. And Draisaitl, he can have those games where like he has like one shot and like isn't involved. It's not like super likely that'll happen, but it has happened before where I'd rather have the safety and given the matchup with Ovechkin that we'll get to later. Do you have anything on the Edmonton side? We're gonna get into tiers at the end after we go through all the games. So Jim's gonna really help out with the tiers aspect of things. But if you had anything that you wanted to add on the Edmonton side for Classic.
As far as stacking goes, the only thing I would suggest is maybe just use McDavid and Draisaitl just as alone as a pair. You don't even have to stack Barry or Nurse or RNH or any of those guys with them. The third guy on that line, I mean, small percent exposure to him as a 3-man stack, just because you never know. He might get in there at a cheap price, but that's the pair you want. It's McDavid and Draisaitl. They run that offense. You usually almost always want to go with the power play stacks with that team anyway. So Nugent Hopkins is still in play. Nurse and Barry correlate highly with McDavid and Draisaitl, even strength and power play time. Just salary-wise, it makes it easier to fit a lot of other stacks in with them if you only use those two guys as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on the Montreal side, it's so hard to figure out what the hell Montreal is going to do. Toffoli being out really hurts them as well. But one guy in cash that I absolutely love, especially on Fanduel, is Shea Weber. He is 4.8, and it's just way too low for him. Before their little hiatus here, he was starting to shoot the puck a lot more. And everyone who's ever watched hockey should know that Shea Weber's just shoots like 100 miles an hour shots. And if you repeatedly do that in a game, the chances of you getting at least one or getting an assist on a deflection are pretty high. His price is way too low to not just put him in your cash lineup on FanDuel. For tournaments, I don't think Koskinen is that good. It's really hard to figure out what line for Montreal is actually going to do the damage and do the scoring. If I had to pick one, I would give the slight edge to the second line of Drouin, Suzuki, and Anderson. I wish Gallagher was playing on the top power play, which he's not, which I don't understand it. I never understand their lines at all. If you wanted to do a one-off of Gallagher, you can. He normally shoots the puck a ton. It's really hard to gauge how Montreal is going to do coming back from not playing or practicing for about 2 weeks.
Basically, with Montreal, anything you want to throw out there is going to work at some point, because if you look at the correlation matrix, they don't have even a single pair that has high correlation. They changed their line so much. They spread the goals around so much that, I mean, it's barely 30% correlation max between any two players anywhere on that team that actually get points. All of their top players, I mean, it's so spread out. You can basically mix and match them any way you want. You can put all 5 of them in a row in the DS and say use any 2 of these guys, and you're going to get some kind of correlation somehow out of it.
Yeah, they're very, very frustrating team to stack for tournaments. But I got nothing else on this game, so we'll move on to the next one. We have the New Jersey Devils at the Boston Bruins. The Devils are implied 2.1. Boston is implied 3. Brad Marchand is back in. At least he's projected to be back in top line, top power play. Jake DeBrusk, we're still waiting on to see how he's doing with this COVID protocol. I don't think he's going to play, and they're going to get Brandon Carlo back on defense. But we will start with the goalies. Obviously, Halak is going to be pretty chalky. He's not too expensive in a good matchup against the Devils. And then we have Mackenzie Blackwood projected. It's not confirmed quite yet, but I can't imagine why he wouldn't get the start here. And I love Mackenzie Blackwood. He's been so good against Boston all season. I think he's cash viable on this slate on FanDuel at 7,200. I was saying before how Blackwood against Boston this year, and I wrote this up in my GPP notes on my cheat sheet. He's 3-0-1 with a 962 save percentage and a 1.2 goals against average. I don't know what it is, but he performs against Boston. And he did shut him out last game. Boston's offense isn't that great right now. They're not really scoring that well. Like last 10, I'm looking at the RS here, 29th, under 2 goals a game over the last 10 games. And it's not that their defense is hurting them. Like they rank 3rd best in goals against in the last 10 games. Their offense isn't producing. With Marchand back, kind of worries me a little bit with Blackwood, but with how I was able to construct my lineup with Blackwood in there, it's hard for me to move away from him and kind of give up one of my other options. But what are your thoughts on the 2 goalies here?
I'm looking at the history. This is kind of crazy because Jersey just seems to have Boston's number. They have a winning record against them over the last 2 years. They have a winning record in Boston. Here's the crazy part. In 6 games over the last 2 years, including whatever games they played this year, Jersey has 2 shutouts. Boston has 2 shutouts. These are low-scoring games for some reason. This is seriously making me rethink using Pasta in my lineups at all tonight. Boston's averaging 1.3 goals a game in the last 6 games against Jersey at home, and the Devils are averaging 1.67 goals a game in the last 6 games in Boston. This is the goalie matchup here. Blackwood, like you said, he has high GPP potential. He's already shut out Boston. He's going to see a lot of shot volume. Halak could easily get the shutout here tonight too. I mean, it's kind of crazy the history between these 2 teams and the amount of shutouts they're getting against each other. These just something about this matchup. They're playing each other very tightly.
Yeah, and I think the Devils kind of play up when they play against Boston. Like, it's obviously not an easy thing to go into the Garden and play against Boston. I think without fans kind of helps a little bit too, especially for the road team. But I don't know what it is, but like Blackwood's, he's so hit or miss like this year. But I think when he's on a hot streak, you got to just ride the hot streak.
Blackwood's got a lot of talent. He's going to have a good future with that team if they could put a team around him. The Devils are just another one of those teams that's just been struggling for years to find their core to build around. They're not strong in any one area, but they have some pieces in place. Blackwood's one of those pieces they need to be building around. They just got to get some offense in front of them.
Yeah, and I think they're young guys. They're young. Like, they need time to kind of get familiar with the league, get used to it. They got Kokanen and Sharanachov, or however. Do you know how to say that guy's name? I always call Igor. I watched a couple of their games, and like those 2 guys look really good. They're always around the net. They're taking shots. So I definitely think like they have a bright future. And they got Ty Smith on defense. Jack Hughes, obviously. I would love to see Hughes centering those 2 guys on the top line, just to see how it goes. And I remember earlier this year they had a little stretch where they were scoring a ton, surprisingly, and a lot of their guys were really good values. But like for cash, you're obviously not going to play anyone with New Jersey. Not really looking at them really in tournaments either, just because, like you said, these games have been really low scoring. So it's basically goalie or bust for me in this whole game. If you wanted to stack Boston, you can go ahead and stack Boston 1. I'm never going to kind of say no to that. But like with how good Blackwood's been against them, I'm not really making them a focal point. You said about Pasta that you might not put him in your cash lineup. I don't hate him in cash because he's still shooting. He's got 23 shots over his last 5 games, 50 over his last 10. It could have been just because they were without Marchand the last couple games where he was shooting a little bit more and taking a little bit more of the offense. Marchand will take a couple of shots away from him, but I don't think he'll take a lot. I just don't think his price is kind of worth it for the matchup with how low these games have been going, where you can just go up and grab Ovi in a better matchup on like on paper, it's a crappy matchup for the Devils, but like they've been playing really well against Boston. So I'm going to keep riding the history and kind of go with Blackwood or Halak in this one and pray that it's like another 1-0 or 2-1 game and kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, Boston 1 is one of those lines where I'm going to say play them every night because they're going to, the cream always rises to the top. They're one of the best lines in the league. They're always going to produce at some point. Even in this matchup, I find it like just looking at the matchup history between these two teams, I that actually throws up a flag for me for that line, and it's very rare that happens.
Yeah, and if you want to stack their second line, Nick Ritchie's got 19 shots over his last 5 games. That's pretty good. Krejci and Smith, they can score a couple goals. Tournament only for this game, really, for any of the skaters. I don't mind Matt Grzelcyk, 18 shots over his last 5 games. He's still really cheap, gets top power play line. But other than that, in this game, I'm not really looking at much of the skaters. I'm kind of just going goalie and move on. But let's get into the next one. That's a lot more juicy on offense. The Washington Capitals at the New York Rangers. Washington, we have Samsonov is projected. Last I saw, they're implied 3.1, and we have Shesterkin with the Rangers, and they are implied to score 3. So, are you seeing Vitek Vanek, or are you seeing Samsonov for Washington?
Earlier we still had Vanacek because we don't have any actual news from that game, right? Yeah, just project. We were discussing this before we went live. When the sites say projected, they don't know; they're guessing. So when you start seeing likely listed on Left Wing Lock, DFO, and the other source sites, that's when they at least have some kind of news from the arena. Oddly enough, if Vanacek, from where I'm currently set up with Vanacek, I have the Rangers winning the game. Let me see what happens if I put Samsonov in.
I think it's going to be another game where it's a high-scoring game. Like, I think it was 4-1 or something last game, and going into the third period, and then they just blew up. Like the Rangers just went nuts in the third period, and I think it was a 5-4 game. It ended.
Yeah, that game was actually kind of boring. I turned it off and turned something else on, and then that's when all the goals started after I turned the game off. But yeah, like goal totals, the Rangers goals for per game total average is the highest at home against the Capitals. It's higher than their season average. So these teams play, this is the opposite of the Boston Rangers matchup. These teams score a lot of goals against each other. Samsonov, I actually have him projected lower than Vanacek. I just went and looked on that side. So goalie-wise, I don't think you want to use either of these goalies tonight in GPP. Maybe very small percentage just in case they have a pretty good game. But the history matchup is over 3 goals a game for both teams over the last 2 years in 12 games against each other. It's 3.2 goals for the Rangers, 3.25 goals for the Capitals. So we should see some fireworks here, and these are the offenses that you're about to go over that you're going to want to get a piece of.
Yeah, so I'll start on the Washington side. If you're paying up at wing, you're going to play Ovechkin in the matchup. 6 goals over his last 5 games, 19 shots. If he gets anywhere near that circle and he just sits there and he's winding up, you just got to hope and pray that he misses, because that's his spot. He's made that spot famous on the left side there. And I like stacking their top line with Kuznetsov and Oshie with Ovechkin. I saw earlier, and it looks like it changed. But they had someone else projected on the top line over Oshie, but it doesn't look like he's even in their projected lineup anymore. I don't even remember who it was. That's how insignificant he is. But if you want to go with like I like that for tournaments. If I'm playing cash, like Ovechkin's the safest guy. There is an injury note. Lars Eller is still a game time decision, so I'm not really sure if he's going to be on that third line or not. We'll kind of have to wait probably until about 6:30 until they get on the ice for pregame. But Cash-wise, Ovechkin is my main guy. The rest of the team is kind of hard to trust. Looking at the RS here, like in their last 10, their goals for, they rank second in the league, but 6 of those goals come from Ovechkin. And then Kuznetsov and Oshie combined for 4. Their second line combines for 4 total. Their third line has 1. So it's really Ovi for their offense. But again, stack him with Kuznetsov and Oshie. Then you get the full first line and power play correlation. Carlson, I'm not really paying that price for him until he can be a little bit more consistent. With the Rangers side, Zibanejad has finally figured out how to frickin' score this year. And I have not played him all year until the last couple of weeks, and I started playing him again. And the shots have been there all year, so you had to know it was coming. He's not going to shoot that poorly all season. And now he's finally turning it around. He's blocking shots. He's got 8 blocks in his last 5 games. Stars on teams, especially centers, they don't block shots. So the fact that he's putting his body out there and blocking some shots is encouraging. He's got 10 points over his last 5 games. He's got 18 over his last 10. I just think he's a fantastic cash play in this game. I just don't think either goalie for Washington's really going to be able to stop him much. You can stack him up in tournaments with Kreider and Buchnevich. I love Adam Fox. Fanduel finally priced him up, but he's just been so consistent lately. He has 11 assists in his last 5 games. I mean, 5 of them came in that one game when they scored 9 against Philly. But outside of that, he's still playing really well, and he's still getting those assists. And their top line with Fox is probably going to be pretty popular. I do really like their second line of Panarin, Strome, and Kakko. Strome's been great too. He's got 9 points over his last 5 games with 12 shots. He's been very consistent. He's kind of priced at his ceiling on FanDuel at 5,900. So I don't love it for cash, but I also don't hate going Strome and Zibanejad in cash and using Strome as one of your utility guys. There's one guy who I like a little bit more for utility over Strome. Their production wise has been pretty similar in terms of FanDuel scoring. And just so I don't have a ton of Rangers in my cash lineup, I'm going with the other guy. But if you're not playing Fox or if you're not playing Zibanejad, play Strome and pair Strome with Fox or pair Fox with Zibanejad. Just got an update that Vanacek is starting for Washington. Just got confirmed. So
I was actually, when you were done, I was going to say DFO was showing him as likely, but now that left wing locks confirmed that he is going to start. So
that'll be good with the research station. Nothing's got to change there. Anything else on the offense in this game? I think this is a pretty high scoring game.
I think this will be a high scoring game with the Rangers. We already talked about they have depth scoring now. Panarin is back, and Zibanejad's found his hot streak. Granted, Zibanejad, 6 of his goals came in 2 games against the same team, but that got him started because he rolled that breakout game, that 6 points in 1 period against the Flyers. He rolled that into he just kept the momentum going. Fox correlates nicely with everybody. So if you're using line 2, you use Fox. If you're using line 1, you use Fox. If you're using the power play, you use Fox. He's getting in on everything. He's kind of Panarin, Zibanejad, and Fox are 3 guys you can build lineups together and lineups around. I just say they're your 3 centerpieces, but Fox correlates with both Panarin and Zibanejad and can be used together as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I love Fox. I actually just added him to my FanDuel core cash just because we definitely can fit him in there, and he's just been so consistent. And even though he's priced up now, he's still going to be 30-40% owned, I'm sure. Yeah,
because now he's priced into the range of where his production is at. So, I mean, he's still going to make value. He's still going to double value on some nights, triple value. He's just not going to have insane 5-6x value like he was on some nights with how low he was priced.
Oh, yeah. All right, so we'll kind of broke down that. It's going to be a high-scoring game. Love all pieces of that. For tournaments, Ovechkin on the Washington side is my favorite for cash, and then Zibanejad, Strome, and Fox are my cash plays for the Rangers. But we will move on to the next game. We have the Columbus Blue Jackets at the Tampa Bay Lightning. Columbus is projected 2.2, Tampa Bay 3.4. Injury news, we have Cernak is still out and McDonough is still out on the defensive side for Tampa Bay. We're seeing Curtis projected. I think he's likely for Tampa Bay. And Elvis Merzlikins for the Blue Jackets. And this game for me is kind of a stay away mostly. Like Tampa Bay's like highest projected on the slate, so like they're gonna gain some ownership, but they're kind of getting scoring all over, so it's hard to kind of pinpoint that one line that's gonna just blow up and score a ton of goals. So first we'll get your thoughts on the two goalies in this game.
Elvis and McElhenney. McElhenney just does not get a lot of starts. Vasilevsky is still the workhorse down there. Both these goalies are 500 this year. Elvis is definitely not playing up to his potential last year. And it's not just the team in front of him. His save percentage is not there where it used to be. Let me find him real quick. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Lowest projected goal in the slate. His save percentage for the season, 0.914. It's actually not terrible. 5-5 record with 2 overtime losses and 12 starts. Does have 1 shutout. McElhenney, 7 starts, 3 wins, 3 losses, 1 overtime loss. 0.88 save percentage. But Columbus just looked terrible in their last 2 games against Detroit and Tampa Bay. Anyway, slice it is still, I mean, my opinion, the best team in the league still. They've been consistent all year. Their scoring does move around, and it looks like they did change their top lineup again recently. I don't know when that happened, but I mean, they have so many pieces that they can mix and match. The scoring does come from everywhere, but that's a team where I like to just either stack the power play. Their power play has an 80% power play goal chance tonight, according to the research station. Or just, take pieces of line 1 in one lineup, take pieces of line 2 in a different lineup. Columbus, there's just nothing I'm liking there. McElhenney, I don't even think is worth the GPP shot, because even if he does get, maybe on Fanduel, if he does have a low scoring, low goals against, but I don't think Columbus is going to have any chance of putting up enough shots on goal to make him worth playing on Draftkings, where the save bonus is so much more important.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking back at the research stage, they only played twice in the last 2 years, but Columbus has only scored 2 goals in those 2 games, and they've given up 12.
Yeah, that's in Tampa. They oddly enough, they have four goals a game average in their last 6 matchups overall. But that was still a 1-3-2 record.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the only positive that I kind of see with using McElhenney is on the road in the last 2 games, they're shooting 31.5 shots a game, which, I mean, their team was different, obviously, the last couple of years than it is now. I don't mind McElhenney for like large tournaments. Like if you're playing 150 or whatever, you could throw like 5 or 10% on him. I don't think he's going to be high owned either, just because he's 8,700 on FanDuel, which is absurd. But I do like, so I'll start with the Columbus side, and because he's just not that good, I don't mind if you want to throw like 2 or 3% on Columbus 2 of Bjorkstrand, Atkinson, and Roslovic. They're obviously, none of them are really scoring right now. Their whole team isn't scoring, but I do like that line, and you can throw in Seth Jones. He's shooting a bunch. Between those 4 guys, they have 46 shots. And if they score a couple goals, I think that those 4 guys are going to be involved in the scoring. Other than that, like, you're not touching Columbus in cash. You're not touching them in single entry. But if you're making 100, 150 lineups, I would maybe get a couple % of their second line. With Tampa Bay, like we said, it's so hard to pinpoint where their scoring is going to come from. I do prefer their second line of Killorn, Cirelli, and Stamkos. I just think they're kind of better overall. Braden Point's kind of hit or miss, and he's definitely not a cash play, especially for his price. Palat had a really nice hot streak going, but he's kind of cooled off a little bit. Hedman, only if you're stacking like the power play, I would play Hedman just because his price is so high. And if you do look over at Cam Sheet on DraftKings, he does like Jan Ruda, if I say that right, Ruda. He's getting top line with Hedman. He's got 17 shots and blocks in his last 5 games, and he's near min price on DraftKings. That opens up a lot for your lineup to kind of fit in the studs. So I don't hate that. Like in a game that Tampa Bay should score a bunch, maybe he gets an assist, maybe he gets 4 shots. I don't know. Being that cheap, if he doesn't do anything, he's not going to kill your lineup either, especially because you'll be able to get some of the higher price guys. The other guy I have a little bit of interest, kind of as a one-off, is Yanni Gourde. He's got 6 points in his last 5 games. Who knows? Maybe he gets a goal. Again, he's got 4 goals over his last 5, so could definitely take a shot at that in tournaments. But other than that, I mean, I'm not really looking at Tampa Bay in cash just because they are so inconsistent and they're kind of priced up now. Like Killorn's a little high. Stamkos has been way too overpriced all season. And so I'd say stack the second line. You'll see Sergachev is getting a ton of love from the domination station. I don't really care for him that much. I don't think we need to use him. And other than that, in that game, it's tough to kind of pinpoint who's going to score with Tampa Bay. So kind of mix and match their top 2 lines in your tournaments and hope that they can score 3, 4, 5 goals tonight.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, you got to kind of treat the same strategy I talked about with the Rangers. Tampa Bay's got so much depth. You can't look at them, if you're mass multi-entering, you can't look at them as I'm going to play 1 stack from Tampa Bay. You need to make multiple stacks. You need to target line 1. You need to target line 2. You need to target the power play. You got to mix and match. I could come up with about 4 or 5 different stacks that are all viable for Tampa Bay that I would just kind of reduce the percentages and use them all.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to get exposure to all types of them. But we'll move on. We got 3 games left. We'll go through Detroit Red Wings at the Florida Panthers. Detroit is implied 2.3, Florida 3.3. I'm seeing Thomas Greiss projected for Detroit, and Sergei Bobrovsky is confirmed for Florida. What do you think about the goalies here?
I want to start by actually going back and making a correction. I think I accidentally said that Columbus was getting 4 goals a game against Tampa. It was the other way around. They're allowing 4 goals a game against Tampa. Tampa's just punishing them for that sweep in the playoffs a couple of years ago. It's been lopsided ever since then. But yeah, on to this current game. Detroit picked up 2 wins against Columbus recently. Florida, I think, is going to just overpower him here. Bob, research stations giving Bobrovsky a 65% chance of winning this game. Vegas is giving him over minus 230 odds to win this game. Picard's looking good in his return to play, but only two games this season. And we still don't know who's going to start that game yet either. So either him or Greiss. I think he's got to side with Bobrovsky in Florida here. And let me check one thing. So Bobrovsky is projected to see only 28 shots today. Detroit has low shot volume. It's going to be hard for him, again, on DraftKings to be GPP viable. Playing Detroit, you still want to throw him in there, but looking at his consistency ratings too, he's barely had many games where he's scored over 20 DraftKings points recently. So even in his wins, they've been low scoring wins. So this is another instance where maybe take the Detroit goalie at a low percentage as a hedge play. Bob maybe a low percentage just in case he does have a stand on his head game and Detroit manages to get a lot of shots, but I don't see anybody from this game being in the nuts lineup either.
Yeah, I don't think I don't have a whole lot of love for this game. With Barkov still out, it's kind of hard to figure out where their scoring is going to come from. I do like Bobrovsky for tournaments a little bit, but like you said, with the low shot volume, it's kind of hard. Fanduel is a little bit better of a play because there's no bonus, so it really doesn't matter. You kind of expect him to get the win, and those 12 points on Fanduel are huge. For the Florida side, for stacks, I like their second. Depends on where you look. Left wing lock has them as the first. DFO has them as the second. Either way, they're still together. Verhaeghe, Akari, and Duclair. Duclair had a goal and 5 shots in his last game, and I think he's going to need to continue to keep shooting. And with a matchup against Detroit, I think that he should be able to. So I really like him for his price. Noah Akari, he's like a center that has 13 blocks in his last 5 games. It's just unheard of. He's getting a lot of those on the penalty kill, and Florida's penalty kill has been really good. So he's a nice cheap option. Verhaeghe got moved over to a wing since he's been playing wing for the last few games. So that's a nice little 3-man stack there. I think that's where most of their scoring is going to come from. If you want to play those 3 and then throw like a Huberdeau in, they don't correlate at all, but Huberdeau has been really good of late. 17 shots over his last 5 games. He's kind of taken the Barkov role because he's not usually a guy that shoots a ton of shots. I just hate his line pair with Lindbergh and Connolly. They're both kind of terrible. But if you want to use him as a one-off too, I don't mind that at all. I do think he has a good chance of scoring a goal tonight or at least grabbing an assist or two. For the Detroit side, I did write up their top line. They're super cheap. I think Florida losing Ekblad for the season after that horrific injury might hurt them a little bit. So if you want to throw Detroit 1 in like 2% or 3%, 150 lineups, it's worth a shot. I mean, that way you could kind of stack up Edmonton's power play and hope that Detroit maybe scores 2 goals and that they're involved in it. Other than that, I mean, this game is basically you play pieces of Florida and you kind of just move on.
Yeah, I think Detroit 1's always one of those low-owned stack that's just worth getting a sprinkle of every night. Hronek on defense, if you want to include like Larkin, Zadina, Hronek into a power play stack, that's always viable too. Yeah, that Ekblad injury, that just he was having a great season. I feel bad for the guy that really hurts the team with Barkov already down. That's really all I got left to say about this game, though. But I don't see either goalie doing anything spectacular.
No, I agree. So we'll move on to the next one. Carolina Hurricanes at the Chicago Blackhawks. Carolina is projected 3.3, Chicago 2.8. Some good injury news here. Vincent Trocheck is a game-time decision. I believe he skated at practice with the second line yesterday. So it's kind of looking like he's going to play. He was on a huge hot streak before he got hurt. Teravainen, he is still out for Carolina. And for Chicago, it looks like Strome is going to be back in the third line. But we'll start again with the goalies. We have Alex Neletovich and Kevin Lankinen. Your thoughts on those 2 guys?
And I think it's Nedeljkovic. I'm gonna go with that, but everybody's calling him Ned. He's been fantastic. Carolina, I don't know, they're just breeding goaltenders all of a sudden. Reimer and Mrazek both go to Carolina, and then you think you got a team that has 2 like C-tier goalies that suddenly become, starter 1A and 1B that have been fantastic the last couple of years for him. Ned comes up out of the minors. He's been great this year. He with the what are we at here? Yeah, 8-2-2 with 2 shutouts and 12 starts. I got to give the edge to Carolina here. Vegas is giving them the edge. As far as GPP play, Ned I have ranked as the third highest goalie on the slate. He should see over 30 shots with his consistency ratings and everything on DraftKings. He can easily get over 25 to 30 points there. He's definitely a good GPP option. Lankinen started the season great. The team's kind of fallen off altogether. He's still 12-8-4 overall for the season. He's also a good GPP option because Carolina shoots a ton. If he has a good game, and he gets some offensive support, he could easily hit that 35 bonus tonight and get a win. I think it's going to be a little harder for Chicago to pull the win out against Carolina, but and who did you say? Yeah, Trocheck coming back. You're kind of correct there. I'm currently seeing Svechnikov, Trocheck, and Fast as Carolina line 2 with Niederreiter, Aho, and Neckis on the top line.
Yeah, I like both these goalies for GPPs. Like you, I give the edge to Miletovich. I just think he's been great. Carolina's defense is really good, and they smother the opposing team. I'll start with Chicago since they're pretty easy. Stack their first line in tournaments. Kane, actually, I think they changed their lineup. I was just looking at this because I was intrigued. Left wing lock as of warm-ups on their last game. They had DeBrincat on the third line. I don't know if he ended up playing with them. It looks like he yeah, so it looks like they kind of changed up things. Like, I don't know if they changed it up halfway through the game. But DeBrincat, Kane, and Suter had 10% ice time together in the last game. And DeBrincat played with Suter and Kurashev for 12%. So I don't really know what they're doing. I don't know if they were just trying something new. But if it comes out that DeBrincat, Suter, and Kane are still the top line, I think we can play them in some tournaments. Not a lot, maybe like a 5%, just because the matchup is awful. Connor Murphy's a guy who can be cash viable because he just blocks a ton of shots. Especially on DraftKings where you get that block shot bonus. I like throwing him in there. But other than that, like, you're not going to play these guys in cash. Carolina's way too good on defense to kind of hope and pray. You don't want to hope and pray in cash. You want a solid floor. Patty Kane is going to come up a lot in optimizers. I don't like the price and the matchup for him to play him in cash. But with the Carolina side, with Trocheck coming back, I love the second line of Svechnikov, Trocheck, and Fast. And that boosts their top power play line too with Aho, Hamilton, Svechnikov, Trocheck, and Jordan Staal. Especially with how bad Chicago's penalty kill has been and how good the power play has been for Carolina. I think Carolina's just kind of onslaught Chicago here. For cash plays, I love Nikas there. He's got 8 points, 17 shots over his last 5 games. That's consistency that we want in cash. Even if you look at his last 10, he's got 5 goals, 6 assists, and 25 shots. So his numbers are still good. And I think he's got a pretty fair price. He's playing great. The matchup's great. Dougie Hamilton, Fanduel finally figured it out with him to price him up. If you can afford him, I'm never going to say no to playing him in cash. Trocheck coming back. I do worry he might be a little bit weary. I think he had a lower body injury, so maybe it might take him a little bit to get kind of used to the skating again. But I do like him a lot in tournaments, and like he was rolling before he got hurt, and that just boosts their power play too. So Carolina, kind of all around, you can stack them up, and they're going to put up some goals, I think, tonight. So it's kind of where I'm at with Carolina. Anything else on this before we get to the last game?
No, I just wanted to double back on the lineup change. So yeah, their left wing lock is showing Janmark, Kane as line 1 as of the pregame warm up from 2 days ago. I was interested about that because DeBrincat and Kane had an awesome start to the season together, and then all of a sudden, like on the court, checking the correlation matrix, they just stopped pairing up on goals out of nowhere, and it's been a bit of a streak where they're just not hooking up together. So breaking them up and trying to get some kind of depth production that might be a little boost Chicago. But Carolina should win this game pretty handily tonight.
I agree. So we'll just move on to the last game. We have Dallas Stars at the Nashville Predators. Stars are implied 2.9, Nashville 2.7. This is obviously the goalie news we're waiting on to see if it's going to be Rinne or Saros. Saros was injured, but he did participate in morning skate this morning. And normally sites don't say if a goalie participated in morning skate unless they're probably going to start. So Left Wing Lock does have Saros projected. If Saros is projected, I love him for tournaments. He's been absolutely fantastic. And I loved him the other night, and he continued to produce. I'll look at his stats really quick. So over his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 starts, he hasn't allowed more than 2 goals. Granted, he played Columbus 3 times. He played Detroit 3 times. But a team like Chicago, like, they can still score. He allowed 1 against them. He had 2 amazing games against Florida where he just allowed 1 goal each game. He saw 48 shots one game, saw 41 the one before that. And I think he came in late against Carolina. So he kind of can throw that one out of the last 11 games. So over his last 10 starts, he hasn't allowed more than 2 goals. He's been great. I don't think Dallas's offense is that amazing. The one worry I do have is 2 guys I really like on Dallas that I'll get into after you give your breakdown on the 2 goalies here.
Can you pull up the RS on my screen? I got it.
Yeah.
Shared. So we're talking about whether it's going to be Rinne or Saros because we just don't know yet. So Rinne, not projecting very well, only a 44% chance to win this game according to the model. But if we go to, if you guys still aren't familiar with how these filters work, haven't want to try them, let's go find Hussein Saros here. We're going to hold left control, click. Boom, there he is. He automatically becomes the second highest and actually will become the top highest once we put him on the other side. So we're going to ignore Dobby's top projection because that's against Rinne. Saros takes Dobby's spot as the highest projected goalie, and that's going to drop Condobin all the way down to mid-pack because the model is going to give the edge to Nashville in the event that Saros gets to start tonight. So that's a little trick you guys can use when you're trying to figure out if you're not sure what goalie is going to start a game and you want to look at different options there. These teams play each other tight too. Nashville is 7-6 in 13 games against Dallas. They're 2-3 at home with a shutout. They haven't scored very well at home, but they haven't given up many goals either. It's this is going to be a low scoring game. It's both teams so just hovering around 30 shots on goal each over the course of the season. So a low scoring game with high 30 shot totals. Both goalies here should fare very well, depending on which one gets the win if this game still stays low scoring. Rinne, I would not use too much of in GPP. I definitely do like Saros better though. If he does get to start, and Dobby, you're going to want to have some percentage Condobin as well.
Yeah, I wish Condobin was playing better lately. He hasn't been that great, but Nashville's offense hasn't been that great. Nashville is really going to need to draw penalties, I think, to win this game, just because their power play has been really good and Dallas's penalty kill has been awful. And especially a guy like, I really like Tolvanen from the Predators. He's cheap. He's getting assists on the power play, grabbing a couple of shots. I mean, the shots aren't really there, but with his ability to get the assists on the power play, I really like that. Other guys for Nashville that I do like, Roman Josi, he's definitely in play. Just with how my initial build went, I don't have him in my cash lineup, but perfectly fine using him in cash if you can pay for him there. We're still waiting on Steve Forsberg is going to be in. He didn't play last game. I think he missed a couple games, so he I don't know. We won't know either, probably until after the slate locks and their pregame skate comes out. But if you want to go like a Tolvanen, I like him for value in cash. I like Yossi in cash. If you want to stack up their top line of Tolvanen, Johansson, and Arvidsson, don't hate that either with Yossi. With the Dallas side, the guy that I was talking to you guys about before is Rupe Hintz. He's kind of been back and forth with his injury designations. They've been tending to sit him on one of the ends of the back-to-back, I think just to kind of prevent him from getting re-injured. I didn't see any injury designation tag for him today, but he's been so consistent. Basically the same numbers as Strome, and he's about $300 cheaper. And like I was saying, I don't want to have 3 Rangers in cash, so Hintz is going to be like the guy that I go to instead of using Strome. The kid Jason Robertson, 19 shots in his last 5 games, power play 1, top line. I really like him. Even if Saros plays, I still think he's going to get some shots, and at 4,400 on FanDuel, that's good production there. If you want to do a complete stack, you could add in Pavelski with those 2 guys. Heiskanen, 19 shots over his last 5 games is really good, 25 shots and blocks. So if you want to throw him in your stacks as well, I don't mind it. Klingberg, he just hasn't really been doing it for me this year. I'm kind of avoiding it. It's just a little priced up. I'd rather play somebody else. But any thoughts on the skaters on this game before we go over to the tiers breakdown really quick?
No, nothing offhand for me. Nothing extra to add.
All right, so we have one question that I want to get to. If pairing Zib and Fox in cash along with locking in Hintz, would you add Robertson or avoid another cash stack and go with Tolvanen? That's a tough one because I actually have Robertson and Tolvanen in my cash lineup with Zib, Fox, and Hintz. So it's like there's almost my FanDuel cash lineup. Probably figure out the rest of the pieces. But if I had to choose, I think I would do a little mini stack with Robertson just because his floor is a little bit better, especially because he's been shooting a lot more. Tolvanen gets a lot of his fantasy points on the power play, especially with those assists. But they're both too cheap. But I give the slight edge to Robertson. I think Robertson's going to be a great player in this league once he kind of matures. So that's kind of where I'm leaning here. But we'll head over to a quick little tiers breakdown. Do you have the tiers stack sheet up?
Yep.
So I'll share the screen here with you guys so you can kind of see. And Jim's going to go over briefly kind of where he's going at with stacks and in tiers tonight. And then we can do a quick breakdown of our favorite, like our top 2 plays from each tier for the rest of the slate to end it off before we get going to completing our lineups.
All right, so I like going once we get everything in this chart here. I like going by. Oh, sorry. Main thing I start to look for when I do my GPP lineups is I'm looking for what stacks fit together, what stacks are viable. So I ended up with Pasta and Bergy a lot in tier 1 and 2 because they were the only ones that really lined up. It's hard when there's not a lot of correlation between tier 1s with 2 and 3. A lot of my core tiers ended up coming between 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm pretty heavy on the Rangers. You got Panarin in 2. You compare him with Fox in 4 and Strome in 5. You can go with Zibanejad, Buchnevich, and Kreider in 3, 4, and 5. And you can interchange Fox with Buchnevich. So I have a lot of those different combinations. Tampa Bay, Hedman, Stamkos, Point. I did not use Cirelli. Cirelli, even with being on L2 with Stamkos, they're not correlating very well together. That's kind of a dead spot to me. So I basically stuck with these 4 guys here, interchange Palat and Point with the power play correlation with this group here. Carolina, pretty straightforward. All 4 of those guys together are viable. Same thing with Nashville. All 3 of these guys viable together. I did not use much Pavelski. I was more heavily on Klingberg, Heiskanen, and then Hinson Robertson. I interchanged because the stacks that these fit in, tier 3 was already kind of taken up. To use Pavelski really screwed up the rest of the tier there. Larkin by himself, not worth using. Not good correlation with Montreal here. Atkinson and Borkstrand, some correlation. I think I used them in a few lineups. Florida, did not use them at all. Huberdor and Verhage, just not correlating at all there. Capital stacks, if we get back to our tier 1 stacks here. Ovi, Carlson, Backstrom, Kuznetsov. I used all 4 of those together in a few lineups. Same with Edmonton. I ended up using all 4 guys available here and just trying to trade out McDavid and Draisaitl to break that up some. Kubalik, did not use him in stacks. I won off to Brinkett and Kane in a few stacks. That pretty much sums it up. I think I'm going to rethink using Pasta and Bergeron as much as I did after we talked about that Rangers or the Devils matchup with them. But definitely very heavy on the Rangers tonight and Carolina as well.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, we kind of went over all the stacks and stuff. So with tiers, you really, for tournaments, you want to basically stack up as much as you can. A one-off lineup in tiers is most likely not going to win you a tournament. Even in cash, I like doing a couple mini stacks too. But if you want to go over to just the regular tiers page on the research station, kind of go over my rankings for the 3 tiers or the 8 tiers. Sorry. For tier 1, I'm going McDavid, Ovechkin, Draisaitl, and Pasta. I just don't think the matchup is that great for Pasta, and they haven't really been performing that well against the Devils. For tier 2, I would say it's going to be Panarin, Kane, Bergeron, and then DeBrincat, especially if DeBrincat is actually moved down to the 3rd line. Tier 3, you can't really go wrong with anybody. Pavelski would be the guy that I'm kind of leaving off. Zibanejad is who I'm going to be using in cash. And so it's him and Hamilton I'll interchange with Yossi, kind of interchange those 3 guys in cash games.
I ended up doing that in quite a few lineups where tier 3 was my open tier. Did not use Pavelski as much, but I basically went with a few lineups where I rotated out all 3 defensemen and then sprinkled in some Zibanejad to get a little extra exposure there in those lineups.
Yeah, so I would say it's probably Zibanejad, Yossi, and then Hamilton for my top 3 in that tier, especially like for cash purposes. Tier 4, let's see, I'd go Nurse, Fox, and probably Buchnevich as my top 3 there. Huberdeau is a solid one-off too that we can throw in there, especially with the shot volume of late. And the shots and blocks for this, are these over the last 10 games?
Yeah, everything is last 10 games.
Okay, yeah, I see that up there now. Should have looked before I asked. Tier 5, it's really going to be probably Strome and Barry for me as my top 2. And then obviously if you're stacking up anyone else in that tier, correlate your stacks like with however you're stacking up the rest of the team. Tier 6, I'm looking at tier 6 is kind of a tough one. I'd probably say Aho is going to be my guy in cash. He's a little bit riskier because his floor isn't that great, but he's got a really good consistency rating in his last 10 games. I think he's going to be the safest in this one when you're not stacking. Tier 7, you're going to probably want to look at Petrie or Svechnikov, especially getting Trocheck back. I think that's going to help him a lot. Seth Jones is really interesting as a one-off. Really good floor lately, 57 shots and blocks over his last 10. Those would probably be my 3 guys there. The rest is basically if you're just going to stack up in other tiers. And then tier 8, it's going to be Hintz, Weber, and Robertson as my top 3. Niederreiter kind of comes close in there. Ekholm, he's up there too. Tier A is kind of, it's actually a tough tier.
Yeah.
What do you think about that 8th tier there?
And a lot of lineups, that was my open tier, so I rotated it, which is basically where I use the same 7 players and then make a duplicate lineup where I used every single player from tier 8. I did that with probably 2 or 3 groups of lineups today before I ended up using stacks that were used tier 8 and then rotated in other areas. So I have pretty equal exposure to most of these guys. I'm a little heavier on Niederreiter, Henson, Robinson because they actually fit some of the stacks. Grizzlick, I think I have him in some Boston stacks, not much. Kuznetsov is on all my Washington stacks. Cash-wise, Grizz is going to bring you to highest floor. His CR is pretty good, 80%. Kuznetsov has a decent CR, but it's scoring based, so his shots and block floor is not there. Robertson's probably the safest compromise between those two. High floor and a high shots on block total. Weber as well. Weber doesn't bring the upside though. I mean, he's going to get you a floor or nothing. So overall, that's where I'm looking at with that tier. Just one note I thought was interesting when you were talking about tier 6, I believe. Aho doesn't have the floor, but his consistency is there because he's getting the goals. So it's always a tough choice when you have guys that have high floors. They're getting the shots and blocks, but their scoring isn't there. So their CR, they don't bring a ceiling. Cash-wise, it is tough to choose between guys like that. Seth Jones, as an example, over in tier 7. His shots and block total is through the roof, but we're not expecting that team to score. So it basically comes down to if you're pretty confident somebody else down here is going to get some goals to get a higher score, there's the guys you want to use in cash. If you can't really pick out somebody here that's going to do some scoring, then I would revert to the shots and blocks total and the consistent floor there.
And especially like tier 6 is kind of like I would call it like an island tier. Nobody really stands out. So I would basically see what teams I'm stacking and throw someone in there that correlates with that stack. So like Carolina, you can get a stack in. Dallas, you can get a stack in, especially like with Klingberg. And that's kind of how I'm rotating tier 6 is wherever it correlates with at least one other guy in my lineup, I'll throw that guy in there because nobody really stands out above everybody else in that tier.
Yeah, and that's a good thing too. I mean, especially in cash. I mean, it is fine to stack in cash. You don't have to take the best projected, the best floor player. You can still try to do some stacking. So, did you say you're rating McDavid as number 1 on the top tier?
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, if I was using McDavid in cash, I'm probably taking RNH for the power play stack correlation in tier 6.
Yeah, that's a good point. But we have about 45 minutes until lock tonight, so we're gonna go finalize our lineups. You guys finalize yours. I will be around Slack. I'm sure Jim will be around too once he's finishing his updates with the research station and domination station. So just tag us in NHL Talk, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have coming up to lock. And good luck tonight.
All right, yeah, good luck, everybody. Thanks for having me back, Matt.